Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Alicia Stubbs. I'm the Senior Manager of Family Engagement and Advocacy at Easter Seals, Ontario. And I'm so excited to be here today for us to learn more about assistance for children with severe disabilities, so ACSD funding. You'll note that the workshops that Easter Seals, Ontario, along with TD Bank, are made possible through TD Bank's Secure Futures financial workshops through this pilot project. And so we're very grateful for TD Bank to allow us to be able to do this. I just want to note that this presentation is for information purposes only. So any specific questions to do with your own personal experience, they do ask to connect directly with the office in which they'll provide that information further into the presentation. So with that, I will pass it over to our guests.
Thank you. My name is Andline Tibbin. I am a Special Services Officer with Assistance with Children with Severe Disabilities and Special Services at Home with the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services. And I'll be doing a presentation on ACSD. And I have my colleague here who is going to present herself as well.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Leanne Alpha. I'm also a Special Agreements Officer with the ACSD, SSH, and Enhanced Respite Services Program. So I guess we'll get started with the presentation. Oops.
Okay, thank you, Leanne. So I guess we're going to get the slideshow started. We are going to be discussing assistance for children with severe disabilities and special services at home, as well as a section on enhanced respite. We'll just go and give a general description of the programs and a high-level understanding of how they work. Okay. So next slide.
Can you see my screen online?
I can just see the assistance for children with severe disabilities, the title. I cannot.
Hold on. Can you see it now?
Did you stop the slideshow?
No, it's on.
Oh no, I just see the title page.
Oh. This is the definition of disability page. Can you see this one?
Nope, I cannot see it.
You have to stop your share and then maybe reshare it and then put it into presentation mode. Sometimes that helps with us being able to see through the slides.
Okay, sorry.
Problem.
Screen.
Yeah, if you're having problems, I can assist maybe.
Oh, now I see it. Okay, perfect.
If I put it on full presentation like this slideshow, can you see it now?
I can see it. I can see it.
Okay. How about ACSD?
Okay, so we're gonna just to describe what we're gonna be doing. We're gonna have an introduction, and then we're gonna go through the eligibility for SSH and ACSD, how to submit invoices, then enhanced respite, and turning 18, and then we're gonna break for any questions and answers. Okay, I'll do the first section on ACSD. Okay, next slide, please.
I think my slide is showing a different page.
Okay.
Sorry, what slide is showing now?
The overview slide is showing.
Okay, because I'm on the definition of disability page on my end. Unless
okay, there it is. It's
okay if I leave it like this.
Yeah. Okay, it's good.
Okay.
So just get into ACSD to start off with, assistance for children with severe disabilities, the eligibility criteria. Okay, the first one is the medical criteria. So the child must have a disability resulting in a functional loss regarding an ongoing mental or physical condition, which results in a major loss of the ability or capacity to engage in any substantive activity commonly necessary and appropriate to normal daily living. They must have a document, and this is very critical, which is signed by a healthcare professional, okay? A healthcare professional from Ontario. they must have that document signed and send that in with their application in order to be eligible. For ACSD as well, there's a financial eligibility, and in order for them to fit into the financial eligibility, they need to send us their notice of assessment, and specifically we'll focus on line 150, which talks about the gross family income. Okay, it's income tested, and the income test is dependent also on the family size and also the size of the expenses. So when they apply, that will be taken in regard as well as the disability, of course. And the third item of eligibility is the living arrangement and the status in Canada. For ACSD, both the parents and the child must have a status in Canada. They must be a resident of Ontario and reside in the same dwelling as their primary caregiver. So the child must reside in the same dwelling as their primary caregiver. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. Okay, so the definition of the disability in ACSD, Assistance for Children with Severe Disabilities, the child must have a disability which results in severe functional loss in regard to ongoing mental or physical condition. So ACSD, also their mental health issues are covered with ACSD. It's very critical, one of the big differences between the two. And also it must result in a major loss of the ability or the capacity to engage in activities of normal daily living, included but not limited to the ability to walk, communicate with others, feed or bathe themselves. Okay, and those are some of the criteria under the expenses, which we'll go over as well. This definition is not intended to specifically include or preclude any particular type of disability. So whatever the disability might be, you can send your application and then we can actually decide based on our criteria and move forward with that. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, this is a sample of the ACSD application. Once again, lots of people will be doing it through the portal, but of course you can do it through email as well, and you can, if you are somebody who likes to do it by hand, that's also feasible. So some of the sample of the application, like we have there, extra clothing, the cost of the additional clothing needed due to the child's disability. So not just the regular clothing you buy for the child, but the extra clothing needed for the child's disability. If they tear up their clothes, if they soil their clothes badly, and you might need to buy some extra clothing, you'll fill it out in there, but just the additional clothing you need. Okay, now you need to remember to add a verification for camps and nursery programs, receipts, and explain why the expenses are needed. So for the camp fees and for the nursery programs, we definitely need invoices and receipts in order for us to be able to fund those or to refund those accordingly, okay? And this is the one item that we definitely need receipts for, those two items. The other items, it's based on your prognosis, okay? Now, ACSD supports an extraordinary costs. Please note that the ACSD financial assistance can range from $25 to $580 a month, and the funding may be used to cover a number of different items. You need to contact your special agreements officer to see if you are eligible for an increase to your monthly benefit, okay? And you will need to contact them and they'll give you the needed information, the procedure to demand an increase, okay? The child would be eligible for things such as drug, dental, vision, hearing, aid benefits, and repairs to ADP approved mobility equipment. Okay, so these things are also qualified as an extra amount based on top of the grant. Based on the grant, the things which are covered for within the grant and the expenses within the grant are transportation and meals costs related to medical appointments. And beware that if they already have funding from ODSP and OW, we would prioritize the funding they get from there in order for them to cover those costs. The other costs which are covered are extra clothing, diapers, linens, laundry costs, special shoes and boots. That's on top of the ones they already get based on their disability, the extra ones they need, the extra educational and social expenditures, as well as medical expenses, drug costs not covered by the existing plan, and other expenses. And it's very important that to be reviewed that these expenses need to be incurred based on a direct result of the child's disability. So it cannot be just any old expenses. It needs to be something which is based on the child's disability. If they do have a medical note to say that this they need this because of the child's disability, it's even better, and that will assist with making sure that item is covered. Okay, so at this point, that's the end of the presentation on ACSD, and we're going to transition. And Leanne, my qualified colleague, is going to be doing the presentation on special services at home and ER. Thank you.
Thanks, I'm blind. So I will be talking about special services at home, or SSAH, eligibility criteria for the program. So there are only two main eligibility criteria that we look at, and the first one is the medical. So the child must have a developmental or physical disability with ongoing functional loss or limitations. The document must be signed by a healthcare professional in Ontario. The limitations of a child's capacity to carry out these activities of daily living that are necessary to acquire independence and well-being, as well as tasks associated with typical age-appropriate developmental stages, cannot be accomplished without assistance. And the second main criteria is the status, or the immigration status, of the child only. They must have Canadian immigration status, they must be a resident of Ontario, and the child must be living at home with their family. So the definition of disability for the Special Services at Home program, specifically, we do not accept applications with a mental health diagnosis for SSH only, as the guideline is that the program only funds for a developmental or physical disability. We do note the ongoing functional limitations, that the limitations in a child's capacity to carry out those activities of living that are necessary to acquire independence and well-being, as well as tasks associated with typical age-appropriate developmental stages, cannot be accomplished without assistance. So this is a sample of the SSAH application. So this is just a copy of what the paper application looked like, but now we are onto the online portal, like Online mentioned, but it does kind of shadow the physical copy of the application. So we do kind of look at mainly the behavioral challenges of a child compared to disability-related costs, where the ACSD application kind of asks for. So this is one example where we ask about the personal development support of the child, if they require constant to never support for these kind of things, such as communication, social skills, and community activities. And we do also ask and suggest for families to put in as much detail as they can in terms of their specific child situation per category on the application. SSAH supports an extraordinary cost. So SSAH is a time-limited funding program. Contracts are approved yearly from April 1st to March 31st the following year. And it is important to note that funding is not guaranteed from year to year for our program. And costs and supports that SSAH covers are parental relief or respite work, social skills programs, recreational camps, and routine homemaking tasks such as house cleaning, snow removal, and grass cutting. And we now also have the permanent eligible expenses that are effective April 1st, 2023. Families who are approved a contract can look online for more information as to what specific expenses are approved and not approved under this permanent eligible expenses. So I'm just going to go over the immigration status in Canada that's required for both ACSD and SSAH. So for ACSD, again, we do have to have the parent and child's Canadian immigration status in Canada. So these are the following ones that are approved: Canadian citizen, permanent resident, refugee claimant, protected person, convention refugee, and temporary resident. And what's not allowable for the program is if the parent and or child has a visitor, tourist, work permit, visa, or international students. And again, for SSAH, we only look for the following immigration status just for the child. I'll just go over quickly the documents required for both programs. So for ACSD, we do require a little bit more. We do require for the full application to be completed. Most importantly, that the disability-related costs are completed. Sometimes we have families submitting in an application where they submit all the required documents, but the actual application is blank and there's no disability related costs submitted. So that counts as an incomplete application. In addition to that, we do require for the applicants or parents' Canadian birth certificate or immigration status in Canada. We require the child's Canadian birth certificate or immigration status in Canada, a copy of the child's Ontario health card, the medical documentation stating the child's disability or diagnosis completed by a physician or psychologist in Ontario, the most recent notice of assessment for the applicant and spouse from the CRA. We do require all pages, and as well as a copy of the most recent Canada Child Benefit, which can also be received from the CRA as well, all pages of that copy, and the direct bank deposit form from the bank or a void check. For special services at home, we do require the complete application form, as well as a copy of the child's Canadian birth certificate or immigration status in Canada, medical documentation stating the child's disability or diagnosis, and direct bank deposit form from the bank or a void check. So how to submit SSH invoices. So again, families who are approved of a contract will be receiving copies of blank SSH invoices that's catered directly to each family. So it will have their caregiver information on there, their authorization number, as well as the current fiscal year. Authorization numbers do change every year for families who do have an approved contract. And this is kind of what the top of the SSH invoice looks like. If a family is submitting invoices for respite or parent relief, at that top right box where it says worker, parent relief, worker information is what's required to be completed by the respite worker. That provides us verification that they did hire a respite worker. And then options to submit through invoices through are by fax, email, mail, or the online platform to My Direct Plan. And this is what the bottom part of the page of the SSH invoice. It will have a blank table for the families to complete either their respite services or expenses that they want to claim for the program. So they can write respite, the date from and date to they hired their worker, the total number of hours, the hourly rate, and the total amount. And then just that top right box on the page where it asks for a parent relief worker information to be completed. And we don't require any sort of verification such as like a copy of the receipt for respite specifically, but for expenses such as the permanent eligible expenses, we do require receipts. And the way to fill out that sort of claim for that expense is where we have the example here for Walmart. They can write the specific item that they purchased, such as a Legos, bike, tablet, laptop, the date they purchased that exact item, and then the total amount they paid for, as well as submitting the receipt with their invoice. So incomplete invoices will be returned to the family and may delay reimbursement. We ask that families allow for 30 business days or approximately 6 weeks for payment from the date received in our office to receive a reimbursement. And a separate invoice for each worker must be attached, and official receipts are required for proof of purchase for registration fees for camp, recreation, and permanent expenses. So My Direct Plan is the other option families can use to submit invoices online. It's a free online portal for clients to manage their SSH as well as enhanced respite funding. However, we as an office do not have access to My Direct Plan, so we do suggest for families to contact My Direct Plan directly if they have any questions or issues with their My Direct Plan account. And they can reach out to them by going to this website. I think they have like an online chat portal, or they can call them directly at this 1-800 number. So now I'm going to be talking about the Enhanced Respite Program. So the purpose of ER is to provide funding to increase the amount of respite available to families caring for a medically fragile and or technologically dependent child at home. As of April 1st, 2023, $4,130 is approved per child each fiscal year from April 1st to March 31st the following year. The home care and community the Home and Community Care Support Services, or HCCSS, formerly known as LIN, determines eligibility for children who are medically fragile and technologically dependent. So again, I want to note that as a regional office, we do not do the approvals in terms of the child being eligible for the program. They do have to contact HCCSS directly to get assessed by a care coordinator if they're eligible for enhanced respite funding. And then HCCSS would send us the approval form, and we only issue the funding, which is the $4,130 per fiscal year. For children turning 18, there are 2 programs that we do refer families to apply for come the time the child is close to turning 18 years old. And the first program is Ontario Disability Support Program, or ODSP. If a child or family is receiving ACSD, special agreements officers can actually facilitate the initiation of the referral for ODSP for applicants. ODSP does accept applications 6 months before a child turns 18. However, if a family is not receiving ACSD, or they're only receiving SSAH or enhanced respite, clients must directly apply to their local ODSP office. And the second program is Developmental Services Ontario, or DSO. The Developmental Services Ontario is for adults who have a developmental disability. However, they start accepting applications come the time the child turns 16 years old. And if families need more information in terms of applying for this program funding, they can visit the DSO website. And this is our contact information for the Toronto Region ACSD SSAH office. We do have our general program phone line, which is 416-325-0500, as well as our general fax number and our ACSD email address that families can submit documents to. We also have links to our online application portal for ACSD and SSAH. And again, just to know, for enhanced respite, there's no online application. It is by direct contact with HCCSS to get assessed by a care coordinator from that office. And if families require SSAH blank invoices, we do advise for them to contact their special agreements officers directly, and we could send it to them via email address or by mail. And I think that's the end of our presentation. So I'll stop sharing, and I guess if anyone has questions, they can go ahead.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. So if folks have questions specifically about the program, it sounds like that they can reach out directly to the office if it has to do with those. Perfect. Oh, I see. Jan, did you have a question? I just noticed that you came off mute.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for this great presentation. It's something which I honestly didn't know, and it's good to add it to my knowledge base, if you wish. Just to recap, all these programs are basically geared towards youth. Is that correct? Until the age of 18, right?
Yeah, these programs are youth-oriented, less than 18, anything from 0 to 18.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's all. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. So before I end the recording, because we usually do allow for some time after the recording, just in case anyone has any questions that they wish not to be recorded. I just want to thank you again so much for sharing information about ACSD for our TD workshop, Secure Futures. And with that, I will stop the recording.